The Dhamma for today is called the Lokadhamma, the Dhammas of the world, realities of the world. Certain realities that are an important reason for the cultivation of religion, of spirituality, and particularly the Buddha's teaching. The realities that we have to acknowledge and we have to understand that provide us with the perspective that leads us to appreciate a deeper understanding of reality and a life that is independent and free from attachment. So, eight Dhammas. The first is gain. Gain is a reality in the world. Labha, gain of wealth, gain of possessions. It's an important foundational reality because it's such an integral part of our ambition in the world. We strive to gain. We seek out gain, wealth, possessions, material objects of our desire. We seek out gain of friends, gain of children, marriage and pets. We seek out all kinds of gain. We seek to gain things, to get things, to obtain the objects of our desire. And this is a reality. Getting things is a reality of life. It's something that we're very familiar with, that we learn from very early on to be a part of life. Getting presents as children, acquiring things through commerce and so on. It's a reality. It's something we can depend upon in the sense that it does exist. It's not beyond anyone's capacity to gain things. It's something that shapes our attitude towards life. In many ways, we seek out things knowing that they're gainable, they're obtainable. With the right effort, with the right focus and the right ambition, we can achieve the objects of our desire. This is a reality, and so it seems it's reasonable or it's understandable anyway, that this shapes people's perspective of the world and becomes a focus of people's lives to obtain the objects of their desire as some kind of overarching goal. But the second Lokadhamma is loss. And just as gain is an inevitable and integral part of human life, loss is also equally integral. We have gain is a part of life, but we also have loss, and usually in equal portions. Anything that you gain is eventually going to be lost. If not during life, then at the end of life we're going to lose everything. But throughout our lives we experience all sorts of loss of all of the things that we desire. There's the danger of loss. There's even the threat of loss that leads to worry and stress, even while we have the things that we wish for. We have the objects of our desire, we are in possession of them, and yet there's worry and fear of the potential for loss of physical possessions, loss of companions, loss of parents, loss of children, even loss of health, loss of limb, loss of youth. All kinds of loss are an integral part of life. And so we see the danger here. We see the problem with this attitude, this perspective of chasing after the objects of your desire, because obviously that sets you up for the potential for loss. It sets you up for the suffering that comes from loss. So much depression and sadness and stress and suffering comes from losing the things that you cling to, that you like, that you desire. So These are a pair. These are an integral part of reality, and understanding them both as being unavoidable, that makes us at least ask the question of how do we find happiness when life is uncertain in this way. The third Lokadhamma is fame. Well, fame is not something everyone seeks out, but yet it still is something that is desirable, agreeable, pleasant to most people. But even if it's not sought out or even agreeable, it's still inevitable. It's inevitable, or it's integral in life. It's an essential part of life that people know about us. For some, this goes to an extreme of being famous. And it's something that becomes addictive for those who have some modicum of fame. As they start to taste the pleasure of being well known, they enjoy it, they crave it, and it becomes an obsession or a focus. People seek out fame, think of ways that they can become more popular, more famous. Nowadays on the internet, popularity is much more commonly sought out. People seeking out friends, how many friends you have, how many followers you have, how many subscribers, how many viewers. It's a part of our psyche, something that is agreeable, enjoyable, desired, and something that's obtainable, something that we all experience to some degree or another. But of course there is the opposite. There is obscurity or loss of fame or lack of fame. And for those who are attached to their fame, they slide into obscurity over time. No one is famous forever. Obscurity is also a part of life, balancing out the existence of fame. For some people, it's the opposite, where they would prefer to be obscure. But the same problem holds. You can't always be an unknown. You can't always stay hidden. And for some people, fame is a thorn in their side. It becomes a cause of stress and suffering, having to deal with the fame, having to deal with the popularity, and yet they can't avoid it. These things are integral part of life, and they're incessant. There's aspects of life that come and go as they are caused. Meaning there's no control. We can't choose how much gain we have or loss or fame, or we don't choose these things. They're beyond our control. They're a part of life as opposed to a part of our capacity to choose or to establish. We can't choose how much fame we have. We can't choose the things that we gain, all the work that we might engage in to get the things we want and to be who we want can often be in vain and is certainly unpredictable and impermanent, subject to change, subject to loss. The fifth is praise. Praise is an essential part of life. We are often praised for good things we've done. We're sometimes praised for bad things we've done or useless, meaningless things we've done. Sometimes we're praised for reasons that have no right to be praised. Sometimes we're praised for things we didn't even do. Sometimes we're praised falsely or we're given fake praise by those seeking to ingratiate themselves into our good graces. But we like praise, and generally it's sought out. For some people, for those who are insecure, it's a very strong craving and need almost to be appreciated, to be liked, to be praised. For those who are addicted to this sort of thing, it can be quite a stress for them when they're not praised. Just not receiving praise can be a real stress, a real source of tension, even frustration, anger, bitterness, when people don't appreciate things about you. Now that being said, of course, this is one worldly reality that is a part of the Buddha's teaching to some extent. Praise, where it's deserved, is a valuable activity. We should praise each other, and those who do provide praise where it is due perform a good deed. It's a kindness. It's called mudita, where we appreciate the good qualities of others. And when you express that appreciation, let them know that you appreciate them. It's a valuable activity, about valuable undertaking. It's a wholesome action. Nonetheless, the problem isn't, of course, with being praised. The problem is that it goes to your head, as we say. It becomes addictive. It becomes a source of conceit, something that we need, something that we crave, something that we require to be happy. We become dependent on it. And so it seems reasonable, again, that this should be obtainable. Reasonable that we should expect other people to praise us. No? But not only is it true that sometimes we aren't praised where we think we deserve it, there's the sixth Lokadhamma, which is blame, where people say bad things about you, say things to your face, criticize you to your face, insult you to your face, say bad things about you to your face, or behind your back. And when you hear about having been disparaged in this way, true suffering can arise. If you're dependent on these things, if you're vulnerable to them. It's a real danger in the world, especially for those who are addicted to praise, who are accustomed to praise. For those who are used to being praised, any kind of disparagement can create great suffering, great stress, even anger, holding a grudge against those who have said nasty things about you. So this kind of back and forth is an essential part of life. We are praised, we are blamed. The Buddha said, Natti loke anindito. There's no one in the world who is blamed, even those who don't deserve it. Just as praise can come undeserved, so blame can come undeserved. But deserved or undeserved, deserved blame is something we should appreciate. We should appreciate when other people criticize us where it's deserved, and that's how we should generally look at blame. We should calmly, mindfully, with equanimity, inspect ourselves and determine whether the blame is warranted and appreciate the gift of blame, the gift of the criticism. That the Buddha said this is like someone who points out buried treasure to you, something that is very valuable. Of course, being alerted to a flaw in your character is an incredibly valuable gift, something that we should appreciate and praise. But the point is that it's inevitable, sometimes earned, sometimes not earned, and blame, just like praise, isn't a problem. The problem is our dependency. We depend on praise. We depend on not being blamed, not being criticized. Our happiness depends upon us, our satisfaction, our contentment, our peace of mind. But this is the reality of life, that these things are inevitable. These things are a potential part of, a potential consequence of life as a human being. We can't safeguard against these things. The seventh is happiness or pleasure. Pleasure is an important part of the world and the most essentially sought after goal in worldly life. It's what so much of our ambition is geared around, so much of our life is focused on, the acquiring of sensual pleasure. Beautiful sights and sounds and smells and tastes and sensations, on physical sensations. We do so much for these things. We'll fight for them. We'll sometimes steal for them or manipulate others for them. We'll work long hours in arduous tasks, arduous employment, all thinking about not only the gain of money but the sensual pleasure that comes from having what we want. So we'll set up our lives in such a way that we have pleasant sights, artwork, or living in nature, or companions, beautiful husband or wife or children, beautiful clothes, beautiful house, beautiful car, all these things that we like to see, all these things that make us happy to have. Beautiful sounds, so we have all these instruments to create beautiful sounds. Music is such an integral part of worldly life. Seeking out pleasant sounds that please the ear, that create this pleasure in the body and in the mind. Or we like to live in nature, and we enjoy the pleasant sounds of the birds and the wind and the insects, the pleasant sounds of the wind in the trees and the water of the river and so on. All these, always pleasant sounds is always what we seek out. Pleasant smells, scents of flowers, scents of pure perfume. Seeking these things out is an important part of worldly life for most people. Beautiful, pleasant tastes. Taste is so important and so sought out. Making sure we have the right food, the right seasoning for our food, good seasoning, drinks and things that taste good, candy and sweets and chocolate and cake and all these things that satisfy our craving for the pleasure of it. And we seek out physical sensations through comfortable seats and beds, or comfortable touch, sensual touch. The kinds of sensations that bring pleasure. These so deeply ingrained in our psyche and so deeply a part of societal undertaking. How much of our resources as human beings are spent, as societies, are spent on simply attaining pleasure. And again, as with all these things, it seems, or it's understandable, it seems reasonable to most people that this should be a goal, because it is a part of life. This is a worldly Dhamma, a truth of life. Pleasure is a part of life. But, as with the others, there's an opposite. The other truth of life is the opposite of pleasure, and that's pain. Pain is an essential part of life, just as pleasure is. And how much of our time is spent chasing away, running away from pain, unpleasant sights, unpleasant sounds, unpleasant smells, unpleasant tastes, unpleasant feelings. We do so much to guard against these things. As much as we seek out pleasure, to the same extent we chase away or run away or escape from pain. And yet these are a part of life. They are the vicissitudes of life, the essential qualities or essential realities of what it means to be human. Just as we can't live a life, we're not destined to lead a life without pleasure, we're also not destined to lead a life without pain. These are the realities of life, things we have to contend with. And so we see the problem, as with all these, the problem in chasing after pleasure is we become dependent on it. And of course when it's not there, you're dissatisfied, but more importantly, or more an extreme, when you experience pain, it's a double suffering. Not getting what you want and getting what you don't want. You're vulnerable because of your preference for pleasure, because of your dependency on pleasant sights. You become equally, to the same degree, vulnerable to unpleasant sights. Addicted to pleasant sounds, you become vulnerable to unpleasant sounds. Addicted to pleasant smells. Those who are most addicted to perfume and flowers and pleasant smells are going to be disgusted by unpleasant smells. Those who are attached to pleasant tastes are vulnerable and susceptible and suffer intensely when confronted with unpleasant tastes, tastes that are not to their liking, tastes that are not agreeable. And sensations, when you are used to a comfortable bed, sleeping on a hard or uncomfortable bed is a real torture, real suffering. This teaching is really simple. No? It's not hard to understand. It's not a deep or obscure, profound or complex teaching. It's very simple, and yet it's essential, and it really tells the story of why we practice mindfulness the way we do. Because the important lesson is not to shy away or shun good things. The important lesson is that we cannot avoid the good or the bad. We shouldn't try to. Anyone who tries to run away from pleasure is on a fool's errand, just as those people who tried to run away from pain. The Buddha tried this. And in the Buddha's time, it was a common spiritual practice. It was the logical conclusion of realizing that chasing after pleasant sensations was a fool's errand. If that isn't the way to become free from suffering, maybe the opposite is. Maybe if we chase after unpleasant sensations and run away from all kinds of pleasure, avoid any sort of sensual pleasure, anything good, give up all our possessions, have nothing. They would even go naked, not even wearing clothes, completely destitute, having no gain, no fame, no praise, no pleasure. This was the goal of none of the good things. It's a fool's errand, just as trying to only have pleasant things is. The lesson is that life is uncertain and life is unpredictable, and life is, or the experiences that we have in life are unreliable. And anything that we cling to is going to have something that is its opposite, that provides us stress, because we're partial to something, and that which is the opposite of that thing that we're partial to is always going to cause stress and suffering. It's going to become a vulnerability. So the consequence of this reality for most people is that we find ourselves pushed and pulled. We find ourselves constantly vulnerable, constantly tortured by the vicissitudes of life. The Buddha said your mind is tormented by these things. And he said the greatest blessing, or one of life's highest blessings, a blessing of the ultimate sort, is when the mind isn't disturbed by the Dhammas of the world. Puttassa Lokadhammehi cittang yasana kampati. The mind of whatever person is not disturbed by the worldly, by the Dhammas of the world, the realities of the world. That person has the blessing of the highest sort. So philosophically, it provides good reason for us to practice mindfulness, and it helps us understand mindfulness accurately. Mindfulness isn't about rejecting things. It's about seeing things clearly. You don't have to reject pleasure, you have to see it clearly. Likewise, it doesn't do you any good to try to reject or chase away or run away from pain, or gain or loss or fame or obscurity or praise or blame. So philosophically, it means intellectually, just as an idea, this is something that encourages us to practice mindfulness. But of course, through the practice of mindfulness, you appreciate this teaching on a deeper level, actually seeing what is behind all of these things. That gain is ultimately just an illusion. Getting something means only getting experiences. When you have a nice house or car or possessions that you want, really all you have is seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and feeling, thinking. And those things are not you and are not yours. So you don't actually gain anything. And the same goes with loss. Who lost? What was lost? These are questions that only make sense intellectually. They don't have any standing or any basis in reality. In ultimate reality, loss is only loss of seeing. If someone dies, all you do is lose seeing that person's face. hearing their voice. But those are just sights and sounds, and they're impermanent, and they don't really satisfy you anyway. Having them doesn't make you happy. Not having them doesn't make you unhappy. Only the dependency, the craving, the preference for certain things makes you happy and causes you suffering. So our practice of mindfulness helps us understand on a gain, loss, fame is what is fame, who is famous, right? What does it mean? It's not a reality to be famous. Praise is just sound. Praise is words, is meaning. Intellectually we understand what is being said, emotionally we appreciate what is being said, but in reality it's just sound. Sound has value in terms of providing information. There's no question that even an enlightened person understands what's being said. But they understand it objectively. They're due to their experience and their understanding of reality as not being worth clinging to. They don't cling to the sound, they don't cling to the meaning of the sound. And so there's no appreciation or there's no attachment to praise or aversion to blame. There's only a processing of it objectively, reasonably, based on what is true, based on what is valuable. Pleasure and pain, well, pleasure and pain are real, but again, what is to be said about pleasure or pain? Pleasure is an experience, pain is an experience. They don't intrinsically have any value where we can say that pleasure is better, pain is worse. It's an extrinsic quality for something to be good or bad. Experiences aren't good or bad, they arise and they cease. None of them are worth clinging to, worth getting upset about, worth attaching to. They just are what they are. They come and they go. They're not worth it, most importantly, because they're unpredictable. The vicissitudes of life are unpredictable. The realities of the world are undependable. You can't depend on the good ones to come, the bad ones to stay away. And you don't benefit from striving one way or the other. Ultimately, if we don't lose things in this life, we lose them when we die. But regardless, they were never ours in the first place. They're only momentary experiences, made up of momentary experiences that are unpredictable, ephemeral, unsatisfying. Don't make us happier as people. Chasing after pleasant things doesn't make us happier. Running away from unpleasant things doesn't make us happier. Doesn't make us less unhappy. It only creates stress and vulnerability, makes the mind waver, tormented by the uncertainties of life. Why we suffer, why we're tormented could be described very much as this, our inability to withstand the vicissitudes, the changes, the uncertainties of life. So, a valuable teaching, one that's very well known in Buddhist circles, something that as Buddhists we should all be aware of and be knowledgeable about and keep in mind as a reminder of what is important and what is true. Not that we should shun any aspect of life, but that we should understand the uncertainties of life and appreciate the value of being independent, being safe from the uncertainty, from the torment that comes from chasing after some part of life in favor of some other part. So that's the Dhamma for today.